Good afternoon. I'm Karen Herring, and I welcome you to this memorial hour as we celebrate the life of Marvin Oliver Spears and honor and mourn his death last month. It is fitting that we gather here at Unity Church-Unitarian in St. Paul to remember Marv, who lived so much of his life here in the Twin Cities and first joined this church with his wife Jeannie in 1968. And it is fitting that this service is also live streamed. To the many of you who are watching in homes near and far, as we remember one who always did what he could to welcome those who often experienced barriers to participation. We welcome you all. So we gather today for this time outside of time, made holy by our attention and our presence, the presence of community gathered in person and online, and by the presence of grief and loss sitting side by side with joy and love and life. We gather in gratitude for Marv's life, giving voice to our sorrow over his death, finding comfort in one another, and giving shape to the farewell that now finally must be said. And as we do, we unveil a deeper knowing that the spirit of life rings out even in the silences of death, that love's embrace is larger than life and death both, that the seasons from which life springs circle over and over again, and that the grief we feel today in time will grow into tomorrow's hope, the breath of life and love, eternally renewed as we continue on, carrying those we have loved and lost with us for the rest of our days. We light the chalice now for this sacred gathering in time, honoring a life well lived by Marvin Oliver Spears and celebrating the many threads he wove into our lives, threads of music and of joy, of nature and of beauty, of commitment to inclusion, of family and love. For these and so much more, we light the chalice today. We are grateful for the music of the River City Quartet, bringing Marv's love of barbershop quartet music. Thank you all for being here.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. I've got a home in glory land that outshines the sun. I've got a home in glory land that outshines the sun. I've got a home in glory land that outshines the sun. Way beyond the blue. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Let it shine on me and shine on me. I'm gonna tell what the power of love can do. Gonna let my little light shine.
I want to note that when I met with Marv's family to plan this service, you who knew and loved Marv most insisted that this be a day of joy and celebration, a time to share his joyful spirit and the music and love that sprang from it, and even the doodling of his that appears on the edges of the pews. Indeed, we are here to do that, but we are also here to name and share our grief over his departure, to make room for grief today, even as we celebrate his life, and to open our hearts to the wisdom of sorrow on this day and in the days to come. And so I share with you these words adapted from Kenneth Patton, reminding us of the gifts of grief. None but the callous will make little the sorrow we experience at the death of our beloved. There is no sure medicine for this ill, and those who love truly wish for none. We know our sorrow as the necessary price of the joy of love and relationship. The heavier our sorrow, the more has been that which is taken away. They who embrace and affirm life willingly invite sorrow as the risk taken in owning the fullness of life and companionship. We learn to possess our sorrows as the measure of our loves. We will learn in this parting to dwell more constantly with the one who is gone, bringing him into our hearts as the companion of our silence and solitude, even as he was once our outward companion. The poignancy of these days, in deepening us, will draw us closer to him and never further away. Time will dull the pain, but even the medicine of time is not sure. The only finally healing is to create our peace with ourselves by possessing our sorrows in our solitude, by possessing our memories and finding in them strength. Friends, gathered as we are today to celebrate Marv's lives, we would come face to face with the mystery of death itself. As humans, we cannot know what is beyond this life. We can imagine a release from suffering and all our human stumblings. We can witness in ourselves and all around us the power of love and, in time, the resilience of life. We can believe in the very core of our being that the great promises of life are not lies. Love and beauty, truth and virtue are lasting, and Marv's spirit is now at peace and beyond all harm. The goodness that was within him will be his guardian always, and the love that held him in this lifetime will attend him forevermore. So we learn from death the preciousness of life and the lasting nature of love that grows beyond it. And we are asked to let our grief teach us to name and honor what is good and unique in our loved one who has died, and to make room in our own lives for those values to live on in the world and in us as our true inheritance from him. I also want to name today that grief tends to awaken other grief. The losses of loved ones who have gone before, recently or long ago, as well as the sorrows present in this particular time of pandemic. Do not be afraid of grief's return or its lingering. Find your own ways of befriending it, and it will help you carry the sorrows of this time as well as the memories of Marv and other loved ones who are no longer with you in body. Grief can be a doorway to the loving presence of our ancestors, both our ancestors that we're related to by blood and those whom we are related to by choice, whose lives have illuminated and blessed our own. Please join me now in a moment of silence, in tribute to and in welcome to all beloved ancestors waiting at the doorsteps of our hearts today. And will you join me in a moment of prayer? Spirit of life and love, source of all being and promise of all our becoming, we give thanks for the life of Marv Spears. And today we grieve the absence brought by his death. As we devote this hour to the barbershop music he so loved and to stories of his life, may we not leave sorrow behind too quickly. May our hearts, now opened by grief, remain open long enough for his gifts to find their own place in our lives, that the threads of his passions, his love, and his commitments might find their place in the patterns of our own lives, an insistence on welcoming and empowering others, especially those with disabilities and challenges, a devotion to his loved ones, an eye for beauty and composition, an ear for music, and a heart generously inclined toward others. Holy One, open our hearts today and always to these and other cherished blessings that Marv shared in his life and in his being. May it be so. And amen.
There is a thread you follow. It goes among things that change, but it doesn't change. William Stafford. Sooner or later, everything falls away. You, the work that you've done, your successes, large and small, your failures too. Those moments when you were light, along with the times you became one with the night. The friends, the people you loved who loved you, those who might have wished you ill. None of this is forever. All of it is soon to go, or going, or already gone. Everything falls away except the thread you followed, unknowing all along. The thread that strings together all you've been and done, the thread you didn't know you were tracking, until toward the end, you see the thread is what stays, as everything else falls away. Follow that thread as far as you can, and you'll find it does not end, but weaves into the unimaginable vastness of life. Your life was never the solo turn it seemed to be. It was always part of the great weave of nature and humanity, an immensity we come to know only as we follow our own small threads to the place where they merge with the boundless whole. Each of our threads runs its course and then joins life in life together, this magnificent tapestry, this masterpiece in which we live forever. Parker Palmer.
Welcome. We are so glad you are here with us this afternoon. Before I tell my story, I wanted to start with a brief explanation of the song you will hear soon from the Barbershop Quartet called What a Wonderful World. We are the luckiest family in the world with Dad's Alzheimer's. Over the years, as his disease progressed, he became most appreciative of about everything. So we often heard things like, "This is the best dinner I've ever had," or "Isn't that the cutest baby you've ever seen? That is just the bluest sky." To the extent that now this is a part of our family speak. Our song choice represents both his gift of grace and our love for his way of seeing the world right up to the end. And now, I think there are two kinds of people in the world. Those that keep their cars shiny inside and out, caring for every surface, every day, parking far away. And those who name their cars and pretty much ignore them. As long as they keep moving, the wheels turn. My dad was the second kind of person, mostly. And while not every car he had a name, many did. So I was the first child in our family to learn how to drive a car, and I learned on the Blue Bomber. That was a full-size Ford Falcon van. It was Dad's first job to ride next to me as I was practicing for my license. Our first time out, he told me that his mom had taught him how to drive. And he said he learned from that experience. He said he would not be yelling, "Watch out! Move over! Stop!" But that I was to pay attention to what was happening around me. And indeed, I never did hear him yell while I was driving that car. Sometimes a sharp intake of breath, but never a yell. It turns out that a few months after I got my driver's license, I was with a friend driving that Blue Bomber down Snelling and happily chatting about something. I decided I needed to move to the left lane and bam, ran into something. Didn't even know what it was. Another car I had not seen. Serendipity or divine intervention had Dad leaving a meeting at the intersection of Snelling and University, which is about where this happened, right at that time. The other driver was busy berating me since I might have killed their baby in the back seat, and what was I doing and how could I? and on and on. And I was both trembling and trying not to cry. Dad came over and calmly talked to the other driver, noting that all that had happened was that the door handle had been pushed in. And yes, I should have been more careful. Police report filed. Dad stayed near me the whole time. After all was finished, he said, "Okay, you drive the blue Hummer back home." I looked at him and I said, "How am I supposed to get back into that car and drive that death machine?" He said, "Well, I can drive it home for you, but then all you will remember is the accident and the trouble you had. If you drive it home now, you will remember that you have the skills you need to drive the car. Just be careful, and I'll see you at home." And he was right, and so wise at 38 years old. Of course, we didn't always see things eye to eye. I had many loud, angry fights with him during those tumultuous teen years. Some I didn't even win. It's hard for me to imagine now the life that he balanced. 5 children ranging in age from 5 to 16, a wife exploring her role in the world along with her role as a mother, his full-time job, and those dark moods left over from childhood troubles. How did he have time to think about what words to say, what approach to take in a crisis situation? All I can say is that there are 2 kinds of people in the world: the kind who fall apart in a crisis, that would be me, and the kind who rise to a crisis with wisdom and humor, something my dad did many times during his life. And I am so deeply grateful that this complicated, passionate, hardworking man was my father. I am the luckiest daughter in the world.
As you might expect, after kicking around for 60-some years, I've attended my share of leave-takings, memorials, and funerals. And as I sat in the chair or on the bench or in the pew, a theme began to make itself known to me. Each speaker would comment on the life that they knew, highlighting a value, a strength, a virtue, or other quality belonging to the person about whom they were speaking. It became readily apparent to me that when a speaker would write their comments, they would address only 1 or 2 facets of the life before them, attempting to polish those facets to the brightest shine they could. A co-worker would speak of their intelligence or diligence or skill. A compatriot would speak of their fidelity, their loyalty, or their true friendship. Always they would polish that facet, trying to make it shine like a diamond. But we all know there's more than polished facets to a human being. There are those facets we share with some, but not with others. There are those facets we reserve to ourselves. And there are those facets we wish we did not have. I'm not going to speak of my father's facets today. Instead, I will speak of something far more important, a gift my father gave me. The ability to see in myself and the wherewithal to try and change those facets when I see the need. For in a life lived fully, there will be mistakes, wrong actions, words spoken in anger. those things we would take back if only we could. It is in these darker facets that we are challenged to re-examine our beliefs, our worldview, our concepts of right and wrong. Here, we face the titanic pressure of everyday life, of families, responsibilities, each one adding more pressure until we face a pressure until we face a pressure like unto that which brings forth diamonds from coal. So admire the polished facets when they are shown, for they are worth seeing. But don't forget the darker facets as well, for it is in the interplay of the darker and the polished that we finally see the gem that was my father.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world, what a world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. And I think to myself, what a wonderful, wonderful world.
That was just the best singing ever. Marvin Oliver Spears was born on August 6th, 1932 in Minneapolis, the only child of Ben Spears and Helen Roan Spears. He was part of a larger Norwegian-American family of many aunts and uncles and cousins, and in adulthood, he would become very proud of his Norwegian heritage. His father's job as a vice president of the Sioux Line Railroad took the family to Duluth and as far away as Seattle, and often meant his father was absent for work. But it also gave Marv a lifelong love of trains and all things related. On one visit to a railroad museum, he was overtaken by the experience, saying, "This is who I am." Even a train whistle from the Como Zoo gift shop was known to awaken his identity and emotion. In many ways, though, Marv's childhood was a difficult one. His mother's alcoholism, his parents' divorce when he was 7, and his father's death at the age of 54 acquainted Marv early on with pain and challenges, with loss and brokenness. Perhaps this was the reason that one of the threads he followed throughout his adult life, and the one that now stays as the rest fall away, was the thread of family love. As we've just heard from Shannon and Ben, it was a beautiful thread, a thread of patience, of love, and of those unspoken tensions and troubles that each of us carry as human beings. But it was a thread he did not let go of until his very last breath. Marv's own family, of course, began when he met Jeannie, fittingly in photography club, before either of them could know what a significant passion this would become for Marv. But it was at a shoe dance at the Y when they first began their romance. In the tradition of a shoe dance, the women all take one shoe off and put it in a pile in the room. And the men go up and pick out a shoe and then find the woman to whom it belongs, and they share a dance. Well, Marv was not willing to take this as a random thing. He noticed what shoes she was wearing, and he went and looked in the pile until he found the matching shoe. They danced, they fell in love, they married. Marv was studying sociology at the University of Minnesota, putting himself through school, driving cab, and he and Jeannie married in 1953. That same year, he began working for the state of Minnesota's Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, where he was employed until retiring almost 40 years later. At home, their family grew. First with Shannon's birth in 1954, followed by Darcy and Becky and Ben, and finally Marvin in 1966. The family joined Unity Church, where all 5 children remember roaming these halls, enjoying congregational life. And as the children grew, their father's love of travel translated into long family road trips, for a time in an old school bus, until that broke down, which, as we've just heard about vehicles, may not have been a surprise. Every 2 years, Marv would take 4 to 5 weeks off from work for a family vacation to Mexico and California, to Washington, D.C., to the Western United States. He had the travel gene, and he passed it on to his children. He also started a lifelong habit of visiting gift shops wherever he went, near or far, with or without the family. He enjoyed showing his love for others by giving flowers and gifts and sentimental cards, especially to Jeannie, who was at the center of his personal solar system, but also to his children. On each of his daughter's 16th birthdays, he gave them a dozen roses, and when he turned 51, convinced that he might die early like his father, he wrote a letter to each of his children, naming what he wished he'd done differently as a parent. His passion for photography meant he also took photos of the ones he loved. Always he was behind the camera, rarely captured on film himself, which explains the photo on the cover of your programs today. His camera became a sort of connection with other people and with his surroundings. Sometimes he took landscape photos at the Science Museum. He took photos of the exhibits. Well into his years with Alzheimer's, he was still viewing the world with a photographer's eye. He even took photos of the artwork in his doctor's offices. And in his trips to the emergency room this past summer, he was upset not to have his camera with him so that he could have taken pictures there. At work, he trained his focus on finding employment for people with disabilities. At the Division of Vocational Rehab, he started as a junior counselor, eventually worked his way to become the department administrator. He served as president of the National Rehabilitation Association and was proud to have worked to pass the Americans with Disabilities Act, with all its protections of the rights of people with disabilities. And along the way in his lifelong career, as your program notes, he often welcomed to the Spears home many of his friends with disabilities of all kinds. It would be hard to overestimate the impact of his work. As one of his colleagues recalled, Marv was one who early on challenged the old notions of sheltered work for those with disabilities, instead channeling public funds into a more integrated approach of community employment and laying the groundwork for paying fair wages for employment. His colleague John Sherman wrote this: Marv's far-sighted decision in those days triggered changes in work for literally 10,000 persons with serious disabilities over the last 35 years. His actions helped transform a system which now supports independence and freedom. I estimate that folks earned $200 million more over those years. Very few people can claim to be the critical actor at a crucial moment whose courageous decision changed the lives for thousands. Marv was one of those people. Marv's advocacy and public policy work, not surprisingly, drew him into politics, where he was an active Democrat doing fundraising, leafleting, door knocking, whatever it took to bring about change and bring the people into office who would support that change. And through it all, he sang. A founding member of the Paul Bunyan Barbershop Chorus, and for 20 years, an active member of the Minneapolis Commodore's Barbershop Chorus. It's no coincidence we are hearing barbershop quartet music today, and thank you for bringing that here. Marv knew how to make music, to blend voices, to channel the emotions of his heart into song. Even in his later years with Alzheimer's, he sang in the Giving Voice Chorus, a musical group for people with Alzheimer's and their care partners. And he last met with his group of retired barbershop quartet singers just 2 weeks before his death. After Marv's retirement in 1991, he and Jeannie moved to Colorado in 1992, where they were active members of Church-Unitarian Church. Marv then became a lobbyist for several disabilities-related companies, and he and Jeannie also partnered in developing and running their soft fabric photos business, using a process that Marv developed for printing photos on fabric for quilters. He knew how to keep busy. He and Jeannie returned to the Twin Cities in 2012, and his diagnosis with Alzheimer's in 2014 would slowly change his involvements, but not his admiration and zest for life and its blessings. As we've heard about those later years, he frequently commented on anything being the best meal, the bluest sky, the best doctor, the most beautiful thing, which is what he would have said about his love for Jeannie. The most beautiful and best wife and life partner he could have had. And you, his loving family, responded by accompanying him through what we might call the best death he could have had at home, loved by you, attended by you, just a month and a half after seeing you and your extended family all together for Ben's 60th birthday, where he watched 100 or so of you gathered outside joyfully together again after COVID's restrictions, enjoying one another's company. And you've told me how Marv watched all of you together, how much he seemed to be at peace at that gathering, as if acknowledging it was just the way it was supposed to be. It was, shall we say, the best family gathering. Now, as we say farewell, our task is to name the best in Marv as a thread that each of us can carry forward. As one writer put it, we are each other's immortality. Each of us is a skein of lives stretching forward and back in time, connecting everyone we have known, everyone they have known, and everyone who will come after us. We carry each other back from the threshold of life and death. Some part of those we have loved is gone forever, but some part is ours to have and to hold and to make real in the world. You, Jeannie and Marv's children, will feel and know his absence in an especially daily and embodied way, as you have also experienced his slow departure along these last few years of his illness and steady decline. But you also carry with you the best of him, his legacy and love in an especially abundant supply. This is your true inheritance. May each of us today, hearing the story of Marv's life, find the special thread that is ours now to carry forward, weaving it into the patterns of our own lives in the days to come. I invite you now, as we close the eulogy, and as you hear the bells ringing out, to consider this: what thread from Marv's life is one that you will hold on to as yours to carry forward? Some say the last task of a memorial service is the releasing of the Spirit. After the bell is done ringing, we'll hear one more song from the River City Quartet, singing "I'll Fly Away." And as we listen, let us release Marv's spirit with the singing he so loved coming from you four. Let his spirit fly away while we carry on the threads of love he has given each of us. May this be our gift to him today, as it was his gift to us throughout his life. May it be so, and amen.
Glory, hallelujah, brother. Some glad morning when my life is o'er, I'll fly away to a home on God's celestial shore. I'll fly away, fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by. When the shadows of this life is gone, I'll fly away. Like a bird from prison bars has flown, I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away. Just a few more weary days and then I'll fly away to a home where joys never end. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away.
Thank you. As Parker Palmer said, life never was the solo turn it seemed to be. It was always part of the great weave of nature and humanity. Let us now, with our grief and our joy interwoven in this thread of love, keep that thread visible and strong in our own lives and in the world around us, that we might participate in that weave of nature and humanity. Blessed be, go in love. The family would love to ask you to join them east of the building here under the tent for more stories, perhaps more singing, for the best reception you've ever been at. you.